Our last story is about a high-stakes diplomatic push aimed at ending the war in Ukraine. And at the center of it all are three familiar names. President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, the president's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Witkoff and Kushner are in Moscow today for talks that could shape the trajectory of the deadliest conflict in Europe since World War II. The U.S. delegation is set to hold talks with President Putin in a few hours. The White House says it is very optimistic about the latest peace blueprint drafted by Washington, especially after a weekend of intense discussions with Ukrainian negotiators in Florida.
Administration feels very optimistic. Obviously, you've seen, Steve, that the president's entire team, including Special Envoy Witkoff and Secretary Rubio and the vice president and the president himself, Secretary Hegseth as well, have been working so hard on this effort, and they all really want to see this war come to an end. And so just yesterday, Sunday, I believe that was yesterday, they had very good talks with the Ukrainians in Florida.
Interestingly, Russia's official readout doesn't mention Kushner at all, but it does confirm a meeting between President Putin and the U.S. Special Envoy. The round of diplomacy follows a political storm triggered by the leak of a set of 28 U.S. draft peace proposals. Those documents rattled officials in Kyiv and across Europe, who believe the initial plan leaned too heavily towards Moscow's demands. Europe pushed back almost immediately. A counter-proposal was drafted and a tense meeting in Geneva followed. Out of that came what U.S. and Ukrainian officials are now calling an updated and refined peace framework. But the biggest question remains, will Vladimir Putin accept it? So far, the signals are mixed. Russian commanders briefed Putin on Monday on the capture of two frontline towns, Pokrovsk and Vovchansk, battlefield gains that strengthen Moscow's negotiating leverage. President Putin has hinted he may accept parts of the American plan, but only if Ukraine agrees to surrender more territory, a condition Kyiv has repeatedly said it will not consider. Ukrainian President Zelensky has been clear. Ukraine's sovereignty is non-negotiable and the territorial question remains the toughest of all. Speaking during his visit to Paris and subsequent meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron yesterday, Zelensky said he expects to discuss key issues directly with President Trump soon. But he also criticized the idea of leaving European allies out of post-war reconstruction planning.
The territorial issue is the most difficult. The issues of money and reconstruction, in my view, and I am speaking honestly and we have discussed this, are, of course, hard to finalize without the presence of our European partners, because the money is in Europe. To me, this does not seem entirely fair. And the issue of security guarantees is also crucial. We need concrete commitments from the United States and concrete commitments from Europe.
Macron echoed that point, insisting that any final deal must include both Kyiv and European powers.
When we talk about peace, each one of us has a role to play. For Russia, it's to stop the aggression and has not given any signal, any proof that go into this direction. Ukraine is the only one that can talk about territories. It's about its own territories and sovereignty recognized by international law.
French officials say Macron and Zelensky also spoke with Witkoff when the Ukrainian president was in Paris yesterday. As of now, Zelensky has reached Ireland, where he will meet the country's prime minister and attend the inauguration of the Ireland Ukraine Economic Forum. All these come amid a widening corruption probe in Ukraine that has taken away key aides from President Zelensky. Macron, during his address yesterday, also touched upon this issue, saying that a democracy should know how to solve such problems.
Is our role to give lessons to Ukraine? Not really. It also happens that we sometimes have scandals like this. A democracy should pride itself in knowing how to solve that through an independent legal system and while knowing how to put to justice any decider, whoever they are.
As Witkoff and Kushner sat down with Putin today, the stakes could not be higher. A refined peace plan is on the table. Washington is optimistic and Kyiv is cautious, while Europe is insisting on a seat in the room. For now, the world watches, waits and hopes. The next move bends the arc of this war towards peace, not escalation.
They promised glory. They delivered fear. They shape nations. They scar generations. From brutal purges to propaganda machines, from stolen power to violent falls from the throne. Welcome to The Dictator, a series that strips away the myth and then exposes the men behind the tyranny. History remembers their power. Firstpost reveals their truth.